You know, as Catholics, we're no strangers to stories of Mary's presence throughout history, right?
Mm.
But there are some that, even with our faith, we might not be so familiar with. And today, we're going to dive deep into one of those. We're heading to Germany, Heede to be precise, and we're traveling back to the 1930s, a pretty, well, tumultuous time.
Tumultuous is putting it mildly. The rise of the Nazi Party, World War II looming, and amidst all that, you have these apparitions, Mary appearing to four young girls. It's a story that really grabs you.
It does. And what makes it even more fascinating is that these events are known as the apparitions of Our Lady of the Poor Souls in Purgatory. I mean, that right there, it speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Absolutely. This wasn't just a heavenly hello, there was a very specific message, a call to prayer and penance, a focus on those souls needing our prayers in purgatory.
And that's what we're going to uncover today. We've got some pretty incredible source material to guide us. We have accounts from the local priest who was there, Father Johannes Stahlberg.
And there are official reports sent up the chain, so to speak, to the Diocese of Osnabrück and then all the way to Rome.
We also have something truly special, the first-hand testimonies of those four girls who saw Mary. And get this, we even have documents from the Nazis themselves showing their, well, let's just say their concern over these events. And of course, we can't forget the many stories of reported miracles following the apparitions, the cures, and conversions.
And then there are the evaluations by the church, how they weighed in on all of this.
Exactly. So today we're piecing all of this together like a historical and spiritual puzzle. What exactly happened in Heede? What did Mary tell these girls? What challenges did they face? And what impact, what legacy has this all had on the church even today?
Great questions. And to really understand it, I think we've got to start with those four visionaries. We've got Grete Ganseforth, only 11 when the apparitions began.
11. Wow.
Her older sister Maria, she was 13. And then there's Susanna Bruns, also 13, and Anna Schulte, who was 12. All from, it's important to note, devout Catholic families.
So not just some kids with overactive imaginations.
Not at all. These were girls steeped in the faith. And it all began, think about this, on All Saints' Day, November 1st, 1937. They're in the cemetery in Heede, praying for the dead, as good Catholics do. And suddenly, Grete sees her. She whispers to Maria, "I think the Mother of God is standing there."
Chills, right. And what's interesting is Maria didn't see anything at first. She was skeptical, like, hold on, Grete, what are you talking about?
Adds a realness to it, doesn't it? And there was another girl with them, Adele, who also didn't see anything. Shows you this was a very specific grace given to those four.
It really does. Now, what about Mary herself? I mean, what did she look like in these visions?
Well, there's remarkable consistency in their descriptions, which I always find fascinating. They all described Mary standing on a cloud, like a blue and white light surrounding her.
Beautiful.
She wore a white robe, a white veil, and sometimes she held the infant Jesus. He was also radiating light, holding a golden globe with a cross on top. And Mary had this golden crown, 8 points on it.
So not just a simple image, very detailed, very regal.
Exactly. And her expressions change too, sometimes joyful, other times sorrowful, always bright though. It adds this, well, depth to the encounters.
I mean, so you really think about what she was trying to convey.
Yeah.
And then the very next day, All Souls Day, a day we specifically pray for the souls in purgatory.
Right. Very fitting.
Mary appears again, but this time she's alone. No Christ child. Her hands are joined in prayer. It's almost like a visual confirmation of her title, Our Lady of the Poor Souls.
It's powerful. And the locations of these apparitions, they change too. At first it was the cemetery, which makes sense, right?
Connecting it to the souls in purgatory.
Right. But then as things got, well, tense with the Nazis, the apparitions shifted to spots near the church. It's worth noting that even with people gathering, only those four girls ever saw or heard Mary.
A testament to the personal nature of it all. Okay, so let's get to those messages, the heart of the matter. What did Mary actually say to these girls?
Well, one of the first things she asked was to be invoked as Queen of the Universe and as the Queen of Poor Souls in Purgatory. I mean, just think about that title.
It's so encompassing, so powerful.
Queen of everything and everyone, but with a special emphasis on those souls needing our prayers.
And she specifically asked for a new invocation to be added to the Litany of Loretto, Queen of the Poor Souls.
Exactly. Very specific requests, very purposeful.
And then there are those messages we know so well, those calls to holiness. Pray much, do penance for sinners, become better, and be faithful to God. Classic.
Classic, but crucial, right? And she urged them to pray the rosary, a weapon against evil, we know that.
A powerful weapon.
Mm.
And over, she emphasized prayer and sacrifices for the poor souls, both here and in Purgatory.
It was the central theme, the thread running through all of this.
It's interesting. The girls even asked Mary about building a chapel or grotto in her honor.
Practical questions, and she said yes.
Showing that our earthly actions, they matter. They're connected to the divine.
Absolutely. And then there's this secret. On October 19th, 1940, Mary gave the girls the secret for the Pope, Pius XII. It was delivered through bishop burning, but the content, well, it remains unknown.
A mystery. You know, it has this whole other layer to it.
For sure. And then the final apparition, November 3rd, 1940, a bittersweet moment. Mary gave each girl a personal secret, just for them.
Wow.
And then her public farewell. She said, "Now, my dear children, I give you my blessing in this farewell. Remain good and faithful to God. Pray often and willingly the rosary. Now goodbye out, dear children. Auf Wiedersehen im Himmel." That last part, it means until we meet in heaven.
Beautiful. But like you said, bittersweet, especially when you consider what was happening around them. I mean, the Nazis weren't exactly thrilled about these apparitions, were they?
No, not at all. Imagine you're trying to establish total control, and then you have this religious phenomenon drawing huge crowds. People are turning to something greater than the state. It was a challenge, and the Nazis didn't take challenges lightly.
Not one bit. And Gauleiter Karl Rover, a high-ranking Nazi official, he was furious. He reportedly said, "What we have painstakingly built in 4 years, 4 children have destroyed in a single moment."
Talk about feeling threatened. Their whole ideology was being undermined, and by a bunch of kids, no less.
It's kind of amazing in a way.
It is. But the Nazis, they weren't just going to sit back. On November 13th, 1937, the Gestapo, they swooped in, sealed off Heede, and took those girls, those young girls, from their homes.
It's hard to even imagine.
They were taken to a psychiatric clinic in Göttingen, subjected to evaluations and interrogations, for 6 weeks.
6 weeks. They were just kids.
I know. It's heartbreaking. And they faced threats, even punishments. Susanna, poor thing, was locked in a dark room. But through it all, they never wavered. They kept saying, "I have seen the Mother of God."
Talk about courage.
It's incredible. And there's this detail that Grete, during this awful time, she had a vision of her guardian angel, like he was there to comfort her.
So beautiful, even amidst the darkness.
Isn't it? And get this, the psychiatrists, after all their tests and questioning, they concluded that the girls were completely normal, healthy children. No signs of mental instability, no delusions.
So much for the Nazi narrative.
Exactly. But they still weren't done. They forbade the girls from going back to the apparition site. Thankfully, church authorities, probably Bishop Burning, stepped in. The girls were released just before Christmas, and they went to recover at a Catholic hospital in Osnabrück.
A little bit of peace, finally.
You'd think so, right? But even there, some of the nuns were skeptical. Thankfully, others saw the truth. Eventually, the girls were allowed to return to Heede, but under constant Gestapo surveillance. And they couldn't go to the cemetery at all.
What did they do?
Well, they did what faithful girls would do. They risked everything and snuck out to pray near the cemetery. And guess what? The apparitions continued, just more discreetly.
Unbelievable. And then, of course, the war broke out, and those girls, they were forced to serve as nurses in the German military. Talk about irony.
Right. The very regime that tried to silence them ended up putting them right in the thick of things. But, you know, the Nazis' attempts to suppress the apparitions, it kind of backfired.
How so?
Well, the girls' unwavering faith, their bravery under pressure, it only strengthened people's belief. It's like, if they were lying, would they have held up under all that?
Makes you think. Now, there's another element here that we have to talk about, the stigmata. Grete, she started experiencing the stigmata in 1939, bleeding on Fridays during Holy Week.
Very powerful. And it got worse over time. From 1947 until she died in 1996, she was bedridden. A true victim soul offering her suffering for others.
And Mary had spoken of healing, but with a caveat, "I will only heal those who come with the right intention."
Important distinction. So what about those miracles? Were there any?
After the war, around 1945, there were tons of reports of miraculous cures at Heede. You know, with everything going on, detailed medical records aren't always easy to come by. We have church bulletins talking about it, local stories, like a whole town canceling a dance to hold prayer vigils instead. It seems some clergy and doctors who were initially skeptical, they were convinced. And there are all those ex-votos left at the shrine, tokens of gratitude for graces received.
Powerful evidence. But even more so, I think, are the spiritual fruits. Bishop Burning himself talked about this huge increase in people going to confession, receiving communion, more rosaries, more prayers for the poor souls, a real spiritual revival.
It's a hallmark of authentic apparitions, isn't it? That positive change.
Absolutely. And there are even reports of later apparitions, Jesus and an angel of justice appearing around 1945, warning about the state of the world.
Interesting.
It's considered a private revelation, not officially evaluated in the same way, but it definitely fits with the overall message of Heede.
It does. So what about the girls? What happened to them after all this?
Well, they lived pretty quiet lives, always stayed connected to the church, but none of them entered religious life.
It's interesting.
It is. Grete, of course, we talked about her suffering. Sister Jovita Duthman, she knew Grete and said she had this profound faith acceptance of her suffering. It was incredible.
And the others?
Susanna Bruns died in 1994. Maria Ganseforth lived well into the late 20th century, if not beyond. And Anna Schulte also lived to a ripe old age. They all stayed close to the Heede shrine, always testified to what they'd seen.
It's remarkable, isn't it?
It is. They never sought fame or money from this. In fact, they'd meet every year on November 3rd, the anniversary of the last apparition, to pray together. And their stories never changed, not over decades. Those accounts are all in the diocesan archives.
A powerful testament to their authenticity. Now, what about the church? What's their official stance on all this?
Well, it hasn't been formally proclaimed by the Vatican like some other apparitions, but the local church, they've been very supportive. In 1959, the Vicariate of Osnabrück declared that the events at Heede were supernatural.
A big step.
Huge. They acknowledged that final judgment rests with Rome, but it was a clear endorsement from the local bishop. And the Vatican? They gave their tacit acceptance. No objections raised.
And the Diocese of Osnabrück has been actively involved. In 1955, Bishop Whitler approved a chapel in the cemetery. And in 1977, the main church was consecrated as Mary, Queen of the Universe, directly linking it to Heede.
And in 2000, Bishop Franz Jos Bode elevated both churches in Heede to diocesan shrines.
That's a pretty big deal.
It is. Officially recognizes their spiritual importance, encourages pilgrimages, and Heede, today, it's a thriving place of pilgrimage. Regular services, a big feast day on the second Sunday of June, Mary, Queen of the Universe and of the poor souls. There's even an international Purgatorian League.
Wow.
You've got the statue of Mary as Queen of the World holding baby Jesus in the cemetery, the Queen of the Poor Souls plaque, the rebuilt Apparition Chapel in both those parish churches. And there's a statue of Pope St. John Paul II there, too.
That speaks volumes. So what about the Vatican? Are they just letting the local church handle it?
It's how they often approach these things. Leaving it to the local bishops, observing but not interfering unless there's a problem. And remember, Pope Pius XII received that secret message.
Right. And Pope Urban VIII, back in the 1600s, he issued a decree about private revelations. It basically said the church is prudent, doesn't rush to judgment, but if something seems credible, lines up with the faith, and there are no errors, well, people are free to believe.
And when you look at Heede, you've got those healthy, sincere girls, their stories never changing, their message, it's pure Catholic teaching. And then you have those fruits, the spiritual renewal, the reported miracles. The local church, they're fully on board. It's hard to argue against it.
It really is. You know, some apparitions have those huge, undeniable miracles, but maybe Heede's miracle is the miracle of enduring faith. Those girls facing down the Nazis, never giving up. That's powerful.
It is, and their legacy. Well, it's a renewed focus on praying for the dead and that timeless call to repentance to turn back to God.
And for you listening, I think Heede offers a beautiful reminder, especially for us Catholics. It tells us to pray for the poor souls, those who have gone before us. It calls us to penance, to live holy lives. And it shows us the strength we can find in faith, even when things are dark, even when we're afraid.
It's like a beacon of hope. And the church, recognizing Heede as this sacred place, especially for those devoted to the holy souls, it just reinforces that. It's a place of grace, a place where Mary's presence is still felt.
It really is. And as we wrap up, I think it's worth reflecting on this. Here you have these events, these apparitions, happening under the shadow of Nazi Germany, one of the most brutal regimes in history. But faith, it persevered. Mary's love, her comfort, it broke through. And that's a message we need today, don't we?
We do. And maybe, as you go about your day, think about that title, Queen of the Poor Souls. What does it mean for your prayer life? How can you offer more prayers, more sacrifices for those who are relying on us?
It's a beautiful challenge, a call to action. And that's what Heede is all about.
It is a call to deeper faith, deeper prayer, deeper love.